Exactly. I actually got out of the military. I applied to be a firefighter and a police officer and a state trooper. And I went into the unemployment office, filled out all the paperwork. And then the gentleman said, he said, come back again next week if you don't get that, and we can just find something else for you. Back then, they didn't have all the social media networks, and there wasn't all this patriotism to try to find veterans jobs. It was unemployment office and going to read the board.
And the transition out, I mean, what, a week, 2 weeks, you just signed the paperwork,
It
check
was
the
the
box?
same day, actually, like the same day process.
wow.
When I got out, you would actually just go in, turn in all your stuff, sign your paperwork, say thank you, good luck.
And that was was that the kind of, not the norm, but a somewhat easy transition, try to get out and then try to get maybe a firefighter type job, police type job?
Well, I think one of the best things for me when I exited the military is I exited in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I was a native of Louisville, so it kind of helped.
Okay.
Exiting somewhere else, not having I would have to go all the way back home, but I was actually going home on the weekends and spending time with my family, and still had a
okay.
lot of relationships, and I was cultivating relationships before I got out of the military.
So you've been networking from day one.
Yeah, well, networking is your net worth.
Networking is your net worth. I wonder why more people don't understand that. And on a prior episode, we just had that conversation about networking, and it's the relationships behind you.
Yes, true statement.
So I'm so excited to get into the nuts and the bolts of this. You somehow, and I find this interesting because I've candidly never talked to anybody in this industry. You somehow got into the, entertainment industry, music industry. What's the term?
Sports and entertainment at the present time.
Okay.
Then I went full-fledged into entertainment, but initially it was sports and entertainment.
And that was new to you. I mean, you didn't study that. You didn't have a background in that. How did you get into it?
I just knew everybody, and I was just listening to conversations among guys that I played ball with and grew up with. And a lot of these guys were just asking for advice, and I would just be able to kind of lend my ear to the conversation. And that one thing led to another, and it was like, hey, AP, what do you think about this? AP, what do you think about that? And then I started getting other relationships because I used to play basketball at a place downtown in my hometown of Louisville called the Downtown Athletic Club, and I was around sports agents and attorneys. And I was listening to what they would say about athletes and entertainers, and I was like, maybe I could share that with my guys.
Interesting. You know what? I have this thing I call, the chapters of your life, and that was kind of like a certain chapter. And when I've seen good things happen in my life, it's similar. It's a similar type situation where you kind of just fall into it.
Right.
Like the business I'm in now, I literally just fell into it back in 2012 and 13. But then you really have to start learning the industry, right? I mean, you have to start mastering your craft. And so in 30 seconds, paint this industry, the sports management industry.
Yeah, sports entertainment management.
So in 1 minute, what are you doing? Are you representing athletes? Are you negotiating contracts? What are you doing?
All the above. The main thing is making sure that you help the athlete to secure a great contract, making sure that he's set up for success and not for failure, and making sure that you surround him with the right people so he doesn't self-destruct. Because you're taking a young kid or a young entertainer and you're providing him with things that he always dreamed about or he saw on TV or saw other people with. Now they're accessible to him because he can afford them.
Interesting. So are your relationships then with the teams?
Both. I actually had a mentor who had the relationships with the teams, and I had a relationship with the people. So we was a match made in heaven.
Oh, interesting. What aspect of the business was the hardest to learn in the first couple of years? The way you draft a contract?
I think personalities is the number one thing with anything on both sides, because you have so many people giving people advice. And when you're an athlete and you grew up in the inner city like I did, a lot of people felt like they were a part of your success, indirectly or directly. So, there was guys that lent you money. There was guys that helped you through certain things, through certain personal issues. There was guys that did a little bit of everything, because when you're from the neighborhood, the corporate world doesn't exist. Only thing that exists is your surroundings, where you live at, and at that time, what's going on in your life and what's going on in the community that you stay in. So the rest of the world is kind of like obsolete at that time when you're a young guy and you grow up in the inner city with a single parent home, or you don't have a father in your life or any of those things. The streets are your roadmap.
How good then? Well, that's the second part of the question. How much of the people then did you have to deal with? I mean, it was a business transaction, but you said relationships and people. Was there a lot of personalities? You had to guide them. You had to get them to trust you, to sign with you.
Yes, I think you had to gain respect. At the end of the day, it's the same values you learn in the military. You might not like what somebody tells you, but you have to respect the command and respect what they tell you. So I think I earned guys' respect because I grew up in the community. I wasn't a false prophet. I come from where they come from, and I can understand the gripe, the concerns, because I lived it.
Before you signed them, were there a lot of personal conversations about that? Was it
Yes.
a people-to-people type sale?
Excuse me. Yeah, it was. I think one of the main thing is they wanted to make sure that you're being transparent and that there wasn't any hidden agendas and you weren't taking them on a ride that they weren't going to recover from.
Interesting. And they don't know what they don't know. And they're
No, they
looking to
don't
you
know.
for guidance and that.
Yeah, and I was learning at the same time, but one thing I learned is put people around you that know what you don't know. So I actually could share that information, and I would say, give me 24 hours, I'll get back with you. And I would bounce it off all the people that I had built relationships with that knew the business, from attorneys to athletes to, guys I knew were very successful in the sports world. And I would say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then I would kind of share that information.
So walk me down this path. You're in the industry, you're going. What was the next milestone for you in the sports world?
I think I was with a company called Management One out of Cincinnati. My mentor was a guy named James Gould. He pretty much was one of the leading sports agents in the country. We actually met in Arizona. Short story is I actually was out here with a friend who was trying out for the NBA, and he dropped his wallet. I picked it up, gave it to him.
The guy James dropped his wallet?
James dropped his wallet in the airport, and he was telling me that he normally doesn't fly commercial, but he was flying commercial today. He normally flies private, and he needed his identification. He appreciated it. He had money in his wallet. I didn't touch anything. I just gave it to him. He said, "What do you do?" And I told him, I said, "Hey, I live in Louisville, Kentucky." He said, "Well, I'm from Cincinnati." He said, "Why don't you come and visit me when you get back?" And I drove up. I'll never forget, I had a 79 Cadillac that would barely make it around the corner. And I drove up to spend the day with him, and we hit it off the first time.
And that's how he brought you in and mentored you in this industry.
Yes, he did.
It's stories like that. I mean, you can't make that up. You hear that kind of stuff a lot. I mean, you met a guy, did this, did that, introduced me, and then those are the opportunities in life.
Yeah, well, one thing is I've learned in any business is if you're trying to monetize something, you have to be able to turn contacts into contracts.
Turn contacts into contracts. And he mentored you in this industry in the early years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would drive up. I'll never forget, I would drive up Tuesday and Thursday, and I would stay with my mom until my mom passed. Then I was somewhat homeless at the time. And I was, bounce around home to home, friend to friend. And I just kept going. He's like, make sure you come every Tuesday and Thursday. And then even when my car broke down, I caught Greyhound and jump on the Greyhound bus and then walk right over to the office, because Greyhound from Louisville to Cincinnati would let me off right downtown, and I would walk right to his office from Greyhound.
Were the first 4 or 5 years in the industry pretty grueling for you, eye-opening, learning a lot?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me was understand how it all worked. I got to finally figure out how the sausage was made. And I was like, sitting from afar, being an athlete, I never understood why, the contracts, contractual agreements, relationships, how it all played in to the big picture. And by me spending time with him and him being transparent and actually showing me everything, he didn't show me what I wanted to know, he showed me what I needed to know.
What's one of the fastest things that'll kill a contract, kill a deal?
Mistrust. Will kill either from, like, if you're doing a negotiation with a pro team and they promise you this and they promise you that and it falls apart, then you got to share that back with the athlete. And then the athlete's like, hey, I don't want to play for him. I don't want to play for them because the trust is broken.
And that transfers over to everything in life.
It's a true statement.
You got to have that trust, everything. We've had that conversation on some other shows here. Wow, that's good.